Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive paradox behind Apple's wild success. We're going to explore exactly how they built one of the most valuable businesses in human history. And spoiler alert, it wasn't built on having the absolute highest hardware specs out there. No, it was built on something far more powerful, the strategic, almost obsessive elimination of friction. We're going to peel back the layers of this invisible architecture that keeps hundreds of millions of users exactly where Apple wants them.
Okay, really quick roadmap for today. We're going to cover 5 main areas. 1, the loyalty illusion. 2, building the Apple ecosystem. 3, competing by removing friction. 4, the psychology of switching costs. And finally, 5, the walled garden strategy. Let's jump right in.
So, part 1, the loyalty illusion, unpacking the Apple paradox. We've got to start right at the surface by acknowledging a completely fascinating contradiction about Apple's position in the tech world today. It's a paradox that honestly defies traditional business logic.
I mean, think about it. It's the ultimate illusion. On one hand, you have competitors offering cheaper devices, massive customization options, and honestly, sometimes way better on paper specs. But on the other hand, Apple is charging premium prices, offering way less customization, and yet they command unmatched customer loyalty. Even with highly capable, cheaper alternatives staring them right in the face, hundreds of millions of people willingly pay a premium and absolutely refuse to switch. It looks like blind brand loyalty, but as you'll see, it's actually the result of a meticulously designed system.
All right, moving on to part 2, building the Apple ecosystem, from gadgets to digital lives. Let's look at how Apple evolved from a struggling computer company back in the 90s into the master architect of this digital trap. Because this definitely didn't happen overnight. Steve Jobs systematically built this frictionless trap in 3 very distinct phases. Step 1 was pure simplification. When Jobs came back to a struggling Apple, he ruthlessly cut all their confusing product lines just to focus on a few exceptional ones. Then came step 2. The iPod paired with iTunes. This wasn't just a portable music player. It was our very first taste of an ecosystem that completely removed the friction of buying and organizing music. And finally, step 3, the iPhone and the App Store. This was the game changer. This is where users started locking their photos, passwords, and entire digital habits into one single platform. Literally every app downloaded and every photo saved made leaving just a little bit harder. Which brings us to part 3, competing by removing friction. The power of continuity. This right here is the core magic of the ecosystem, what Apple calls continuity. And for this explainer, I want you to really lean in, because removing friction is the absolute heartbeat of their entire strategy. Just imagine this incredibly seamless flow for a second. You get a text message on your iPhone, and boom, seconds later it pops up on your Mac. A phone call rings straight through to your iPad. Your AirPods just intuitively know to switch from your phone to your computer the second you sit down at your desk. Your vacation photos instantly populate across every screen you own, and your Apple Watch literally unlocks your Mac without you ever typing a password. Individually, sure, these seem like tiny features, but combined, they create an interconnected web that completely eliminates those tiny, annoying daily frustrations of modern tech. Competitors struggle to replicate this because they're usually trying to stitch together different hardware and software from totally different companies. There's this great quote that perfectly hits the nail on the head. While other companies are out there frantically adding bullet points to their spec sheets to win you over, Apple is just busy looking for ways to make your life easier. The fewer decisions you need to make, the better the experience feels. And over time, that convenience becomes a habit. And that habit transforms into fierce loyalty. This frictionless design isn't just a pretty interface. It is literally their most effective retention tool. Okay, part 4, the psychology of switching costs. Why leaving is so hard. We are diving into the deep water of consumer psychology now to understand exactly why walking away from all this convenience feels practically impossible for the average user. Because leaving Apple isn't just about swiping your credit card for a new phone. Economists and psychologists call this switching costs. We are not talking about dollars and cents here. We're talking about the mental, emotional, and time-based friction required to abandon ship and start over. It requires immense mental energy to untangle your deeply ingrained daily habits and learn a totally new way of doing things. When you actually sit down and consider leaving, you get hit with this single, daunting question. Will my photos transfer correctly? Just asking that triggers immediate anxiety. And then you start thinking, actually, wait, what about my group chats? Will my smartwatch still work? What happens to my wireless earbuds, my saved passwords, my notes, and all those apps I already paid for? The sheer friction of just finding the answers to all those questions is usually enough to stop someone dead in their tracks. Now, sure, there are technical solutions out there to transfer your data from Apple to an Android or a PC, but they require effort. And Apple understands a profound truth about human behavior. We naturally avoid unnecessary friction. The easier it is to stay put, the less likely we are to ever leave. The absolute mental exhaustion of migrating 10 years of your digital life is this massive, invisible wall keeping everyone securely inside the ecosystem.
Finally, part 5, the walled garden strategy, trust and vertical integration. Let's look at how Apple actually maintains this frictionless structure on a massive global scale.
It all comes down to consistency. Consistency is what reinforces the walls of this garden. Apple pushes simultaneous software updates across millions of devices all at the exact same time. They provide regular security patches and make a huge deal about privacy controls. But it goes way beyond just the software. You've got their retail stores, which are focused on education, and incredibly reliable support systems like AppleCare and the Genius Bar. All of this consistency eliminates purchase anxiety. If something breaks, you know exactly where to go. They've built absolute trust by smoothing out the traditionally awful friction of tech support.
And this is Apple's ultimate superpower, vertical integration. Competitors are constantly struggling to optimize a fragmented mess of hardware and software because one company makes the chip, another makes the phone, and a third makes the operating system. But Apple, they design their own custom hardware, their own custom silicon chips, and their own operating systems. They choose tight integration over maximum openness every single time. By controlling the entire stack from the factory floor to the retail store, they can engineer the friction out of the experience in a way literally nobody else can.
So when you take those hardware pillars and you lock them in with recurring services, the ecosystem basically becomes an impenetrable fortress. It's not just that you own an iPhone. It's your iPhone connected to iCloud and Apple Pay. It's your Mac tied into Apple Music, your Apple Watch synced with Fitness Plus. Every single subscription you add makes the whole setup slightly more valuable to you and exponentially harder to untangle yourself from. One service doesn't lock you in, but the combination of the whole shebang absolutely does. Ultimately, Apple's greatest product isn't a physical device. It's not the iPhone, it's not the Mac, it's not the watch. It's this powerful psychological connection. The ecosystem is built so carefully that millions of people simply do not feel trapped. They don't want to leave because they associate the Apple brand with quality, creativity, and above all, ease of use. Leaving would mean intentionally reintroducing friction back into their daily lives. Who wants to do that? So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to consider as we wrap up this explainer. In the cutthroat world of business and tech, is there literally any strategy more powerful than making the act of leaving feel like a total downgrade? By obsessively focusing on removing friction, Apple hasn't just built a customer base. They've built an entire world that their customers simply prefer to live in. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep looking out for those invisible strategies shaping the tools we use every single day.